after being delayed for over a year, I never thought we'd see Guy Ritchie's new film, and that was such a shame to me because I love Guy Ritchie. He sure does know how to make a slick, action-packed, sexy, cool, fun gangster film. He has such a way with dialogue, witty, snappy, quick, fast-paced dialogue. His films are so frantic in a fun way. They have such a frenetic energy that just kind of gets you engrossed in the film from start to finish. He somehow keeps making Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, but with different skins on them, like Snatch, Revolver, Rock and Roll, The Gentleman, my favorite of his films. There's always got this kind of distinctive Guy Ritchie feel about them and the characters and the way the film builds and is paced and structured that I just absolutely love. And then there's a film like Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, I've botched the title because it's in French. Well, half of it's in French. Half of it is an English thing. Operation Fortune. Not a great title. Kind of a bad title, but okay, that's a title. Colon, comma, what, the two dots. Ruse de Guerre. Ruse de Guerre. Ruse de Guerre. I don't know because I don't speak French, and that's not my fault. Actually, to be fair, kind of is my fault. I did actually study French in high school, so in a way, if I'd studied harder and done well in that class, I would be able to, speak this title. And to be honest, you'd look at me and go, well, you didn't do good in any classes. I did, in fact, do surprisingly well in a lot of classes. Looking back, I don't understand how it is. But French? Not in French. Didn't respect the teacher. Didn't respect the language. I was young. I was in year 7. I was a little 13-year-old boy. I liked doing quips and things with my friends, and we just didn't take it seriously. And in hindsight, I would love to be able to speak French. It's one of those things where you look back and you're like, 2020, if I had the knowledge and experience and maturity of an adult man, but in little tiny me who could do the work, so I'm not going to do the work now. I'm not saying I'm going to learn French now. I'm just saying that maybe if I had this brain in that little brain, then maybe I would have learned French, and then I would know what the title means. Because apart from not being able to say the title, Ruse de Guerre, Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, I also don't know what it means. But to counter that point, my brother also went to the same school I went to, and he did study French. Probably not with that same teacher, because she was awful. When I say I don't respect the teacher, it wasn't just teachers in general. It was that specific woman. She was an awful, awful teacher. Oh my God. I'm having flashbacks. I need to stop thinking about it. But what I'm trying to say is, my brother, he learned French, and he was very good at French. So good at French, in fact, that he actually went overseas for a 6-week exchange to France, where they speak French. But do you know who doesn't speak French now as an adult man, not going to school and learning French anymore? My brother. I feel like I've thrown him under the bus there a little bit. My point is, regardless if I had learned or had not learned French, I would still go into Guy Ritchie's new film that is not French or fancy or about, French things in any way. I would still look at the title, Operation Fortune, Ruse de Guerre, Ruse de Guerre, whatever the title is, and just go, what? What I'm trying to get at, bad title. Okay, so I've just Googled it to figure out what the word means, and it means either a ruse of war, or right underneath it, it says a stratagem of war. So one or both of those. It means that, and I guess that plays into the film in some way, I suppose. I feel like there's a better title somewhere in there, and yeah, just watching the movie, there was never a point where I'm like, Operation Fortune. Ruse de Guerre. Of course! How silly of me to not think that. I even think a character says Ruse de Guerre at one point, because I remember thinking, did he say the title? That I don't know what it means? But I didn't know what he meant, because there was no subtitle explaining what he said, and maybe with context clues I could figure it out, but I was really just more like, I don't speak French. What did you say? I would say it's a bad Guy Ritchie film, right at the bottom of the list, but as a film, it's serviceable, it's fine, it's... This film has all the makings of a Guy Ritchie classic, but something about it feels off. We've got the big star-studded cast, all the sexy, charismatic, charming, amazing actors, some which he's worked with since the beginning, like a Jason Statham, and some he has revolutionized and reinvigorated like a Hugh Grant. The film has gangsters and criminals, and they're all a little bit cheeky and self-aware, and it's none of this modern self-serious James Bonding, and we're not doing any crazy globe-trotting action, insane nonsense like a Mission Impossible. It is very Guy Ritchie. It's dialogue driven. It's witty, snappy, quick dialogue. It's all there. It's humorous. It's funny. The action is there and it's brief and violent. And it's, not shot and choreographed that well, but, there's some action there for the action fans. Even though that is a big criticism, the action, not great. But all the pieces of a classic Guy Ritchie film are there. But something feels off. The best way I can describe it is, remember back in high school or in college, if you were, fancy enough to go to college. So in high school, there were several moments where I would leave class one day and go, oh boy, I haven't done the assignment, I haven't done the studying, and I do not have an essay to present to the teacher the next day. And then my smart, nerdy, cool, and awesome, but super nerdy and lame friend would be like, I've done it 5 days ago and it's amazing. It's the best thing you've ever read. And then you read it and you're like, that is amazing. And then you're like, could I just borrow this and I'm going to dot point 3 or 4 things just to kind of create a structure for my essay. Just to help me out. And because my friend is awesome, charming, and cool, and sexy, and a super big nerd, they're like, yeah, okay, that's, okay. Give it back tomorrow morning so I can hand mine in, and make sure you don't copy it too well. And you're like, I'm not going to copy it, just dot points. And you're just going to copy it. And you're like, oh, a little bit. But what you do, because, even though you are an idiot, you're not a total idiot. You're kind of like a smart idiot in this weird kind of world where that's a thing. And the world is crazy, so that can be a thing. But you copy it all. But every time there's a smart, clever word, say juxtaposition, you're like, that's too big a word. You rub that out with your eraser, because I'm old and we used erasers back then. We didn't. We had pens. Maybe. I don't remember. And so you delete the word juxtaposition and you rewrite the word contrast. It says the same thing, kind of ish, but it's just less clever. You've just dumbed it down a little bit. But then what you do is you misspell contrast. Put the S and T's backwards or whatever, I don't know, do something with the letters. And so the whole thing, it's essentially I presented the same essay as my smart, cool, sexy nerd friend, but one is an A+, and one is just hitting B-, almost a C, but they're like, no, there's enough there if they'd used better wording, if some of these jokes had landed, it's the joke's there, but the delivery's off, and they start middling with it. That contrast, the A+, the nerd friend script, that's Guy Ritchie's usual film. A Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, a Snatch, The Gentleman, his best film, a King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword. Yes, I've included that film, one of the most underrated films of the decade, the century. It's one of the most underrated films of all time, and that's a video for another time. Sherlock Holmes 1, Sherlock Holmes 2, now we're in a Game of Shadows. Another example of a film he did that was good. Aladdin. No, that's a bad example. That's not an example I want to use. What is it? There's another film he's made. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Yes, that's also a good film. Why do people not think that's a good film? I know a character in that may or may not have eaten some people. I've only heard from podcasts. It doesn't sound good. I'm not trying to defend anyone that may or may not have eaten anybody. All I'm saying is you forget the man who may or may not have eaten a bunch of people, allegedly, potentially, definitely. A great film. Henry Cavill's in it. He's so muscly and cool and sexy. It's a good Guy Ritchie film. Those films are the A+ student thing. This film is the essay that I presented to the teacher, and they went, it looks and sounds like a Guy Ritchie film, but something's off. So the film is a spy action film. So how does it fare compared to some other recent spy action films that we've had? Well, it's not as self-serious as the recent James Bond films, but it also doesn't carry the same emotional weight and intense, high-budget action set pieces. And even though it does globetrot, it doesn't have that same kind of epic, grand feeling that a James Bond film does. Or for that matter, a Mission Impossible film does. Those two spy action franchises both really kind of wow and amaze you when they take you to different locales and locations. In this, there's a bit of globetrotting, and at times it's now we're here, and there's a big title thingy. but you don't feel it. It doesn't kind of sweep you away with it. It doesn't take you to those places in the way that I kind of love from a globe-trotting spy action film. And speaking of Mission Impossible, this film has none of that kind of really over-the-top but kind of fun and insane and a little bit goofy but still kind of serious enough that you can like buy it with the spy stuff. Like there's no spy tech or, you know, interesting kind of spy-related shenanigans and silly nonsense fun to have with it. There's no set pieces that remind me of anything from Mission Impossible 4, 5, 6, and even 3, which doesn't have anything too crazy. But there are times when they go to do something, we're like, oh, we're going to have a bit of fun with the spy thing. And then it's just like a voice modulator, and it's mostly just Audrey Plaza from Parks and Rec just being on a computer being like, what's the problem? Oh, don't worry, I've already solved it on the computer. And how do they show that in the film? Just her tapping on a keyboard, and then there's like a screen, and the screen's like, she did the thing. Impressed? And I'm like, not really. And I hear what you're saying. I'm not here for those Mission Impossible-esque action sequences where Tom Cruise almost kills himself with every big action stunt. I'm not here for James Bond doing daring missions and slipping with babes and shooting a man in the face and then being like, I don't care about anything, give me another drink. I'm not here for that. I'm here for the Guy Ritchie fun. You know, that snappy dialogue, that witty, fun, irreverent, quick-witted dialogue. You know, where one character's like, what's this character's name? And then the other character's like, that's Johnny Three Fingers. And they're like, why is that character's name Johnny Three Fingers? And he's like, because he's got 3 fingers. And you're like, oh, I love it. There's none of that. There's like moments that are trying to be that, but it feels like his first script was all Guy Ritchie, and they went, tone down the Guy Ritchie. And he's like, why did you hire Guy Ritchie if you don't want me to Guy Ritchie all over this script? And I'm now remembering, 1, 2, 3, there was about 3 titles in the, you know, screenplay credits. There were 3 credits in the screenplay credits. So I guess the other 2 were like, I want to have my voice. And Guy Ritchie's like, but your voice sucks. And my voice made 7 to 8 to 9 fantastic films. I didn't hate this film. I had a pretty good time watching it. It was like just one of those things where I'm like, I'm in the mood for a silly, light, spy action film with a bunch of charismatic characters and cast members, and, you know, it all just goes by and it's pretty fun and light. But there are so many things holding it back from being amazing, which are the things that kind of, you know, as you're doing a review, you're like, oh, well, yeah, no, it was fine and fun. But then you start thinking like, okay, so the humor, you know, like 20, 30%. I was like having a good time, a couple of chuckles here and there, but there were moments that were like, you know, like a character would say a bit and it's clear, and then there's like a pause in the movie, like the movie goes, you know, like in the, like, you know, a stand-up comedian, he pauses when the laughs are just overwhelming the audience because he's not going to keep talking because he can hear the audience laughing. But a movie doesn't know that you're not laughing. The movie predicts that the audience will laugh and leaves like a pause there for you to laugh. And when it doesn't, I was in a surprisingly packed cinema for like midday, early release. I guess that's summer holidays for you. And it was silent, like deathly silent, like silent where when the music, when like the scene would stop and like to wait for us to laugh before the scene continued, you could hear that like the guy next to me, who's like on his phone half the movie, just eating popcorn, just like... The action is fine. It's kind of like cool when like Jason Statham is like bam, 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 and he's just like a blocking punch, punch, punch. It's like brutal and savage and fast and like vicious. But there's a lot of gun-related violence and gun shooty, bang, bang stuff that's all very generic and a bit like... Ugh. Audrey Hepburn is in this movie? No, she's not. Audrey Palmer is in this movie. I think that's her name. I'm not going to check. The girl from Parks and Rec, the dated Chris Rock. Star-Lord. The girl who dates Star-Lord in Parks and Rec, she's in this movie, and she is a great actress, and she's charming, charismatic, and fun, and in this movie, she's very mixed. Oh, she's given some awful comedic moments. First 20 minutes, I'm like, oh, I like this. It's like a James Bond, like a Mission Impossible. It's a spy action thriller, but it's a bit more like tongue-in-cheek, a bit more self-aware, not so self-serious. And then her character takes it so far. It's like, this is farcical. This is like, you know, like a parody at times. But then the rest of the film, like if it's a parody film, that's fine. She'd totally fit in there with like a, I don't know, like a Naked Gun kind of thing. But hers was just so high up. I'm like, she's doing SNL parodies of the film or of a spy film, and they're just, having fun with it. As a huge Guy Ritchie fan, I am a little disappointed that it wasn't like spectacular and amazing. Like I remember when I watched The Gentleman, and I just watched that at home. I didn't even see it at the cinema. It blew me away. I think I've seen it 3 or 4 times. Like I just love that film. It's everything that Guy Ritchie does, but he's honed his craft and matured, and it's just in this brilliant, amazing little package that is this movie. And the thing that I love so much about that movie is Hugh Grant steals the show. One of my favorite performances. Just love him in that movie. And so knowing that he was going to be in this one, I'm like, that's the role I'm looking for. That's the character I'm most excited to see. And he's good, but he's not great. Like, he's really, really good, but he's not amazing and fantastic and great. And so it's like, the whole film, it's just like a really solid 6 out of 10. And I want to see a 10 out of 10 Guy Ritchie gangster action film, but with a little bit of, that genre spice that is spy action thriller as well. It's just not that. We got Josh Hartnett in this film. I don't see that guy nearly enough. He's so awesome. I love that actor. Ever since I saw him in Lucky Number Slevin as the titular Lucky Number Slevin, I was like, this guy's going places. And then he was in 30 Days a Night, 5 Seconds of Sin City. I think, was that him? Or was that other guy? Was that Josh Duhamel? No, I think it was Josh Hartnett. I think so. Also, now I'm thinking about it, was he the titular Lucky Number Slevin? Or was he just a guy in the film and someone else was the Lucky Number Slevin? I can't remember. I've got to rewatch Lucky Number Slevin. That's a good film. So in summary, I would say the things that I've said. The things I've said in this review, that's my summary. That's just... remember the things I said. You can't remember because you were half paying attention on the phone while you were taking a shit. That's fair enough. That is fair enough. So I'll give it a rating, and I never do numbered ratings, but I will give it a numbered rating. I give this you should probably rewatch Lucky Number Slevin out of 10. You get it? Because I said that thing before, but in the title of Lucky Number Slevin, a film you should rewatch because it's great, it also has like a number 7. So it's like 7 out of 10. To be fair, I'm not giving it 7 out of 10. It's a strong 5 out of 10.